Hello, and welcome back to the Guilt Free Podcast, a place where you can come and get your life together guilt free. I'm Holly, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about self sabotage. Now, if you're unfamiliar with self sabotage, you might actually be more familiar with it than you realize. You just might not have known there was a name for it. Self sabotage is literally, as the name implies, it's when you are sabotaging yourself. This can be both unconscious or it can be conscious. You can be aware that you're doing it, or sometimes it just happens and you're none the wiser. And usually what happens when we are experiencing this sabotaging behavior is it is coming from that unconscious place. And usually that happens whenever we have beliefs about ourselves or our abilities or how we understand things or how good we are at something. And they're not good beliefs, they're negative beliefs. And these beliefs then will have this sort of knock-on effect into our real life, into our real world. And that then causes us to sabotage. And that is where you maybe hold yourself back a little bit, or you don't put yourself out there for an opportunity, or I don't know, maybe you dumb down your oh my God, I'm having like such a brain blank here. But it's it's like you sort of dumb down your skills and your abilities, or you don't put yourself out there for opportunities because you don't think you're good enough, or you don't think you would do a very good job at it. It can even be like in friendships where you've got that sort of old belief, or those old wounds, those old sort of trauma wounds coming through, where if a friend doesn't reply to you, you start taking it personally. You start thinking it's more about you than it is about them. And then you, as a result, sabotage the relationship. Maybe you blow them off, maybe you cancel on them, whatever. So yeah, sabotaging and self-sabotaging behaviors, they come in all sorts of shapes and forms. And I had actually made a post about this on Instagram last week, and I had some really good conversations in my DMs about it. So I figured, do you know what? I'm gonna bring it to the pod and we can kind of talk about it a little bit more than I could in a carousel post. So what it can look like, what self-sabotage can look like. Oh my God, I know this is going to be an episode full of tongue twisters because of this, but what it can look like is it's sort of like when you procrastinate on something. So you'll procrastinate on that task, you will put it off until the absolute last minute. And then because it's a last minute job, maybe it's rushed, maybe it's not as thought out as you would like it to be, just the quality isn't there. If you'd have started it when you said you were going to start it, you could have really given it your all. But now that you have left it down to the wire, it's not great. It's not great. You've got it done, but it's not necessarily done well. And then as a result of that, what happens is, say, for example, it was like a test or an essay at school or a report for work or anything like that. And you've turned it in and you've got a bad mark from it. You didn't score as highly as you did, or the report didn't go down as well as you would have liked, or maybe you got some negative feedback off the back of it. And what happens then is that is like reaffirming those beliefs that you had about yourself, that, you weren't good enough to do this, you don't know enough, you're not smart enough. And it's like reaffirming that negative thought process and that negative behavioral pattern. And what will then happen is you will just continue to sabotage. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. But some other examples that, you might find a little bit more, maybe more relatable is, it can look like failing to keep promises to yourself. You will sacrifice yourself to help somebody else. So that might be, say you have said, do you know what, from now on, I'm not going to drink on a weeknight. that's it. I'm only going to have, an limited number of alcohol on like a Friday or Saturday night. I'm not going to drink midweek because it affects me too much. And I hate waking up with a heavy head and trying to work. It's too much. So you say that to yourself, that's what you're going to do. And then when your friend texts you and says, hey, I've just had a really bad news. I'm going through a terrible breakup. Can we please go for drinks and take my mind off things? Before you know it, you're 5 tequila slammers in and you are kicking yourself, right? Self-sabotage. You were weakened, you were easily influenced, it was too easy for you to just bail on that boundary, that responsibility that you were giving yourself. You were able to just sack it in when somebody had come calling. You didn't have to, you could have easily gone out with your friend, you could have easily consoled them, you could have easily done whatever you needed to do without breaking that promise to yourself. And that is just one of the many beauties of self-sabotaging. It can also come in the form of like perfectionism. So if you will start something, but you don't feel happy with it until it is 100% perfect, and it's your version of perfect, not somebody else's. I remember going to school with a girl, and whenever she would take her exams, she would get perfect scores across the board. And when she would get her paper back and she would read through her answers, she would look at it and she'd be like, no, I could have answered that better. And I'm like, girl, you literally got 100% on that test. Like, no, why are you critiquing this? So it's that self-sabotage, you're putting yourself down, and you're breaking those promises and breaking that trust and reaffirming those bad thoughts that you have towards yourself. And that all ties into having this belief that maybe you aren't worthy of success, or you're not worthy of having these nice things, or having these good opportunities, or having good friends, or even a great night's sleep. It doesn't matter. It all comes down to believing that you're not worth it, you're not worthy, you're not capable. It's all these negative thoughts. And that is what we're going to explore in today's episode and break it down a little bit further. So hopefully you can kind of understand. There's only so much I can kind of cover in a podcast, but if you'd like me to go into more detail in something that I've mentioned today, by all means, you can ask the question in the little Spotify Q&A box. Or if you think that this would be something that you would like to work on privately in a one-to-one setting, then by all means, then shoot me a DM on Instagram. We can set up a call and we can have a chat about it. It's perfectly well within my wheelhouse as a lifestyle and mindset coach. So jumping into the cycle, I have it here beside me, just if you see me looking at it, because I don't want to mess it up. But what I will also do is, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, I will pop the cycle up on the screen as well, so you can kind of follow along. Or you can head over to my Instagram and check out my post about this, and you will see the cycle for yourself. So giving you all the resources today. So sabotaging, it's like a lot of things, a lot of mindset things. It happens in a cycle. Sometimes these behaviors and these thought processes are, they just happen in a cycle when you look at them, and it's like a perfect little circle. Sometimes if you were then to sort of look at it from a different angle, you realize that it's more of a spiral, like a downward spiral. And when you have that awareness, it's good because you can change it into an upward spiral. So looking at sabotage, what we can do, we'll simplify it down. Actually, we'll use like a nice simple example, and say, for example, your goal is to go running 3 times a week. And I know that's just because it's coming to my head because I have a hair on my face. I'm really sorry. It's really frustrating me. Oh, okay. So your goal, say for example, your goal is running 3 times a week. And this goal comes to mind because I was recently speaking to a client about it and about sabotaging with this kind of example that she had in her own life. So your goal is to run 3 times a week. Now, you're a fit enough person for this to be, not to be a terribly daunting task, but you're not fit enough in terms of running frequency that this feels challenging, which is why you've set this as a goal. So what happens then when you set that goal, when you say to yourself that this is what I want to do, whether it is my homework, whether it is running, whether it is a new habit I'm forming or something I'm trying to quit, whatever it is, once you've said that to yourself, the discomfort starts to creep in. This discomfort starts to creep in because it's something challenging or it's something conflicting. It conflicts with like an existing belief that you have about yourself. So as a result, because you're experiencing that discomfort, your brain, in its very primitive way of doing things, it will try and distract you from that discomfort through procrastination, right? So, you're going to maybe put it off, or you're going to justify why you haven't done it or why you're not doing it or whatever. And you're just going to procrastinate it just to avoid it, right? Avoid that discomfort. It's the discomfort more than the task itself. So then, because you've been putting it off, you start to feel that shame and that guilt because you haven't done what you needed to do, or you're not at a point where you feel like you should be. So say, for example, if your homework is due or something, you've got a report or that you need to hand in, and realistically, this point in time, you should have it finished and you should be checking it over before you hand it in. So if you're in that moment where you feel like you should be further along in this task or in this goal, you feel that guilt from, like, oh God, why did I keep putting it off? Why didn't I just do the damn thing, And as a result, you get more of those negative emotions creeping in, So it's no longer just the discomfort. It's now this shame. It's now this guilt. It's all these yucky emotions coming in. And you try to numb that, and you'll numb it with, coping mechanisms, like real primitive coping mechanisms. It'll be things like food, comfort food, binging TV shows on Netflix, binging movies on Netflix, drinking, going out for drinks, smoking, drugs, social media, doom scrolling, right? Okay, how many of us have sat there knowing we needed to do the damn thing, and instead we're like, one more TikTok, one more reel, one more short, right? Whatever it is, one more. I'll do it after this video. Right? Something we're all very familiar with. And that is coming from numbing those negative feelings and those negative beliefs just from that primitive brain trying to keep us safe and protect us from those feelings. So then, obviously, we're now criticizing ourselves. We're sitting there and we're looking at the fact that we haven't done the task. We have maybe had a bit too much to drink. Maybe we've gone down the drug route, maybe the smoking route, whatever the coping mechanism is. Maybe your screen time is sitting at something bananas like 10 hours purely because you've just avoided doing this thing to that extent. You now to start to feel very critical, very, very critical of yourself, right? And you're starting to criticize yourself, and it's more of those negative feelings, those negative beliefs are just cropping in here. And you're saying them to yourself. You're thinking like, oh, I knew I would do this. I knew I wasn't good enough. Oh, I knew I could never just sit down and do this thing. Why did I sign up to this? I knew I was never going to do it. I knew I'm not good enough. And you're criticizing yourself the whole time. And then it's just reaffirming everything, because you've got these beliefs, and then the bad behaviors is coming in, and they're saying to your brain like, yeah, you are all of those things, because look, here's the proof. The project isn't done, the task isn't done, the goal isn't started, we haven't gone running. Instead, we've just sat here and binged through Netflix, or we've started, we're 2 bottles of wine in, like whatever it is, And then we decide to, you know what? No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to focus in and I'm going to get it done. My deadline is now shorter. It's now smaller. I'm going to just get the damn thing done. And then the cycle just repeats itself and it just keeps going. It just keeps going. So it's frustrating. It is frustrating because whenever something is happening and it's reaffirming to your brain that it's right, it feels even harder to fix it, to correct it, you know? And like when you come back to like that running analogy, when you want to go running 3 times a week and you haven't done it, you haven't even started, you haven't, you know, you've got dust on your trainers or whatever, it's telling you by not doing that, by not keeping that promise, by not doing that action, it's just reaffirming your belief of, I'm not a runner. I know I'm not good enough. I knew I would never stick to this schedule. I knew this would be too challenging for me. Blah, blah, blah. But once you realize that, you can spin that, you can flip it on its head and use that to your advantage. So if those negative actions and behaviors will reaffirm those negative thoughts and feelings about yourself, well, then positive actions and positive behaviors will reaffirm those positive beliefs about yourself. So, something that is very good to do here is look at where you're at in the cycle, and we're going to try and break it. And quite often, the easiest point to break that is when you start feeling that discomfort, when that discomfort starts bubbling up. Before you get, you know, balls deep into a doom scroll, we can, you know, try and counteract that. We can kind of be a wee bit more proactive with it. So once you've decided on the task, on the goal that you're going to do, and that discomfort starts to creep in, that's where we're going to try and cut it off, right? Okay, so we're going to try and break the cycle at that point. You can ultimately break it at any point. I find the discomfort point is perhaps one of the easier points in it. It's like the easiest sort of like link in the chain here. Ultimately, by just changing something about your thought process, about your environment, about your feelings, just change something, that can quite often be enough to sort of disrupt the cycle enough. But if you want to make that lasting change, I really recommend sitting down and looking at that discomfort point. When that feeling starts creeping in, you start feeling it in your gut, you know, you're starting to kind of sidetrack or talk yourself out of it, or, you know, maybe make excuses, whatever, that discomfort's creeping in. That is the point where I want you to sit down and I want you to think about what about this task is making me feel uncomfortable. What about it am I feeling the resistance from? Okay, is it, you know, is it like my lack of knowledge, my lack of skill? Like, what is it? And I'm not talking about this from a critical negative point of view, but I want you to be realistic. Like, I want you to be practical here. I want you to really just be honest. Ultimately, just be honest and think about it and think, yeah, do you know what, I don't think I'm good enough to run 3 times a week. I don't think I know enough information to write this essay. I don't think I have enough information to make this report, right? Whatever it is, sit down and identify it, right? You want to really get into this task, into this goal, and break it down into even smaller steps, because then you can identify at which point in those steps is the source of discomfort, right? And you'd be really surprised. It might be something that you had never really considered before, and now that you have broken this list down, you're like, oh, hang on, that we can work with that. So for example, if you wanted to run 3 times a week and you're really struggling to commit to this, and you're not really sure why, and you're feeling all the bad, guilty, yucky, crappy feelings about that, when we break that down into smaller steps, you might realize that actually the fact that you have scheduled this in for first thing in the morning is what's putting you off. It's, you know, that doesn't feel very good. And when you look at that even further, it might be that you typically find mornings very stressful. And by adding a run into that morning, it's just amplifying that stress. It's not helping matters. So maybe what we can do then is change the kind of narrative of it here, right? So we've looked at this list, we've broken it down, we have really identified where we're feeling that discomfort, and we start to kind of flip it on its head, So there may be some practical things that we could do here, like, maybe changing the run from a morning run to an afternoon run or an evening run. Or it may just be a belief that we need to change about ourselves. Like if we're telling ourselves, I'm not good enough to be a runner, like I'm not good enough to run 3 times a week. Well, how can we change that belief? Can you tell yourself that, what? That's why this is a goal. It's a goal of mine to become the kind of person that runs 3 times a week. And I need to start somewhere in order to get to that point. So I need to practice getting to that point. So I may not be a 3 times a week runner now, but what I am is a once a week runner. And I'm quite comfortable doing that. I love going for a run on a Saturday afternoon. There you go, right? Flipping it on its head, looking for those positive opportunities to bring in those positive beliefs in, and reframing those things. If it's something that you think you don't have enough information on, or you don't know enough about it, well, how much do you know? And is this actually just an opportunity to learn more? If it's a project at school or a project for work, maybe this is actually an opportunity to kind of learn something new and to test those limits. And we're looking at that kind of perfectionist mindset again. We're not here to do something perfectly. We're just here to do it, right? And do it to the best of our abilities. And that's important to remember that. So checking in with yourself and thinking, how would I feel once I've done this task, right? How will I feel once I've finally ticked this thing off, once I've finally gone and done the thing? How am I gonna feel? Relief, maybe, that it's over? Happy, satisfied, proud of yourself? Yeah, maybe it is just gonna be relief. Maybe you're just like, oh, thank God. Whenever you think about those things and really think deep down into those things, like feeling the relief that it's done. Why are you feeling relieved that it's done? Is it something, is it maybe something that you weren't really comfortable with, or whatever, like a task or challenge that you're a bit out of your comfort zone with, and now that you've done it, you feel relieved? But then when you think about it, you're like, yeah, I feel proud I did that. Like, I can't believe I did that. I knew I was good at this. Start looking for how you would actually feel when it's all said and done. How would you feel about this task, completing this task? And it's important to remember that. Write it down if you have to, because that's going to help remind you of why you're doing the thing, to stop you from that self-sabotage, stop you from kind of falling off a little bit. We're going to remind ourselves and refocus ourselves that I'm going to feel like this when I do it, and I'd rather feel like this sooner rather than later, because the longer you put it off, you're just going to continue feeling those yucky feelings. And then the moment you do the damn thing, it's going to be such a relief. You're going to feel great. You're going to feel proud. You're going to feel happy. You're going to feel all the good things. So, why would you like prolong the pain when you could just like shorten it, do it, and then reap the rewards afterwards, right? So it is also good actually to hold yourself accountable with this, right? So, maybe you work best with somebody else, like you can team up, right? Or maybe it's just a case that you tell a friend, you're like, look, do you know what? I'm going to switch off my phone. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to focus on this essay tonight. And I will text you when I have, I'll text you at 8 o'clock when I've done 2 hours of work, whatever it is, right? And checking in with that friend, it's going to keep you accountable. instead of feel the pressure from yourself to fail, you're going to now feel the pressure to update somebody else, and you're going to want to impress them. Like, that's just, it's going back to that primitive brain of ours. So you're going to want to impress this person. You're not going to come back and be like, oh yeah, I did nothing for 2 hours, like whoopsies. You're going to say, you know what, I smashed that. Oh, it's really refreshing when you actually have somebody to keep you accountable. For example, if you are trying to run those 3 days and you're starting out with just a weekly run, maybe you could join a running group. You'll meet some other beginners, you'll meet somebody else at your level. Maybe you've got a friend who's into running as well. Having that accountability, it's really going to help you do the thing from a place of wanting to impress that person or not wanting to let them down, rather than a place of like pain or like crappy feelings. One of the most powerful ways to overcome self-sabotage is by working on your self-confidence. So your self-confidence comes with having that awareness and that understanding of your self-worth, right? So if you are sitting here and you think that you're no good, you're not smart enough, you're not capable, you're not worthy, that is gonna, it's all gonna tie in with that sabotaging behavior, because you're going to do things that's going to reaffirm to your brain that you are those things, that those beliefs are true. Your brain is gonna look for ways to say, yeah, I was right. And as a result, it's going to carry out those actions. It's going to sway you more towards those actions. It'll feel easier to do those things than do the hard thing, right? So improving your self-confidence and having that awareness about your self-worth and your value and your self-love, all of those beautiful things, is honestly one of the most powerful and the most potent ways to overcome self-sabotage. So when you've got that high confidence, you are more inclined to stick to your boundaries because you understand your worth. You know how valuable your time is. You know how important your feelings are, right? And you will stick to those boundaries, and that will make it easier to not sabotage, right? Because you are going to say to yourself, yeah, I told myself I was going to do this thing today. I'm going to do it, or I'm going to go meet my friend tonight. We'll have a coffee, but I'm not going to have a drink. If we want, we can make plans for the weekend, and that's what I'll do instead. I'm going to keep my boundaries because I know that I'm important. I know that I'm valuable. I know that I have set these boundaries in place to honor that and to show that I have that love and that compassion for myself. So working on that confidence is really ultimately going to help you. It's going to really diminish, actually. It's going to really diminish the self-sabotage. Having a plan where you can break the cycle is also important, because there will be days where your confidence takes a wobble. Maybe you're having a low day, whatever it is. And that is where you need to kind of have like a backup plan, like a more disciplined backup plan to sort of see you through. But ultimately, working on the self-confidence is going to have such a dramatic ripple effect across your whole entire life. So I really recommend that one. And yeah, I think actually to sum up on today's kind of episode, just as I'm kind of coming to the end of it, I think the quote by Susan Jeffers really kind of comes to mind here, and that is to feel the fear and do it anyway. And this comes down to taking that imperfect action. And I know that is easier said than done if you're a perfectionist and that's something that you struggle with. I get you, I hear you. Recovering perfectionist over here. But it's really going to make all the difference whenever you actually take imperfect action, right? Because all of that planning, all of that work, all of that preparation means jack fucking shit if you don't do the damn thing, right? If you don't move, if you don't take action, right? Don't wait for it to be perfect. Don't wait for it to be a Monday or the first of the month or for the stars to align or whatever it is. Just do the damn thing now. Just sit down. Even if you were to just sit down with a pen and paper for like 2 seconds and make a plan of what you were gonna do, right? You're already getting that ball rolling here. You're gonna just start somewhere, right? And that is really important. It's people always say like, oh, there's no time like the present, or it's now or never, or whatever. And it's true, and it's having that discipline to just say, look, I'm just going to start, and it's great to really help yourself weed out kind of any mistakes. Like there's only sort of so many mistakes you can make before you're going to get it right, and every time you do take that imperfect action and you get it wrong, well, you've literally closed one door off and opened another to try and get to that, to get to where you need to be, right? So there's literally nothing but benefits from taking that imperfect action and from challenging yourself and pushing that comfort zone and really sort of moving through it, so to speak. So I think kind of to end on that, if this sounds like something that is really resonating with you, if this is something that you're really, really struggling with, then, I recommend, if you're sitting here, you've listened to me and you're like, you know what, I've done all of those things. I have tried all of these tips. Like, it's just nothing's working for me, girl. Like, help. What do I do? I get it. I get it. Right. It's kind of the joys. Once you've got this awareness of something that you want to work on, you will try everything, right? So what you could do next, what your next step could be, is sending me a DM on Instagram and we can have a little look at one-to-one work, right? If you're unfamiliar, I am a lifestyle and mindset coach. I love working on self-sabotaging behaviors and limiting beliefs and all of that good, crazy kind of stuff that goes into us as human beings. And I love helping you get through that. I love working with clients who bring these kind of problems to the table and helping, pick them apart and getting to a really strong outcome. So if that's something that you would be interested in doing, then you can send me a DM on Instagram. There will be a link in the show notes and we can have a chat. I offer a complimentary discovery call. It's 1 hour long. There's no obligations to it at all. You don't have to sign up for anything or anything at all like that. You can literally just come for the call and stay for the free coaching session. And if you liked it, if you found it a good experience and you would like to continue on from there, then we can discuss sort of programs and packages and options that's available to you. We can go from there. But if you're curious, the link will actually, I'll put the link to booking a one-to-one in the show notes too. That will just also make it easier. But if you would like to have a chat about booking it, you're more than welcome to in my DMs. As always, that is it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And you can leave any feedback in the little Q&A box in the Spotify show notes as well. But that is it for now. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.